December 2022, and I've crossed the Atlantic to New York to visit some of the city's iconic buildings and museums. In an almost perfect geographic location at the head of a massive sheltered bay, New York has grown to become an economic powerhouse and icon of America. I'm starting my discovery of some of New York's iconic buildings and museums at the southern tip of Manhattan, and hitting both at once with a visit to the stunning former Customs House building on Bowling Green, now the National Museum of the American Indians, part of the Smithsonian Institution. Opened in 1907 and expanded with a rotunda and murals in 1938, the building was constructed so that the Customs Office could move out of old, damp and ill-lighted, badly ventilated offices on Wall Street. The building was only used by the Customs Service for less than 70 years before it relocated into the World Trade Center, and by 1974 the building was vacant and starting to decay. Through much wrangling, disagreements, and failed plans for different uses, the Smithsonian finally opened the National Museum of the American Indians in the building in 1994. The museum tells the story of all the native people of the Americas, from those who lived at the southern tip of Patagonia through to the top of modern-day Alaska and Canada, laid out in geographic order. 4 miles north up Manhattan from Bowling Green, and you reach the glitzy, iconic, tourist heart of New York, and often called the crossroads of the world, Times Square. Times Square occupies 5 blocks, stretching from 42nd to 47th Streets, and it's to the lower one of those that I'm heading to take in more of New York's iconic buildings. Just 2 blocks east and you reach the Public Library of New York, the 4th largest library in the world and the 2nd largest in the US behind the Library of Congress. The current building dates from 1911 and is the flagship library of the service, open for all to look around. The Treasures exhibition on the entrance floor of the building houses a number of unique artefacts, including Charles Dickens' writing desk, a first edition of Ulysses, and Christopher Robin Milne's original Pooh Bear. 2 blocks further east down 42nd Street, and you reach perhaps the most famous train station on the planet, if only for the number of films and TV shows it's been shown in as shorthand for the city, Grand Central Terminal. Built between 1903 and 1913 to bring together multiple railway lines in the city centre, its awe-inspiring booking hall with the iconic clock on top of the information booth make this a must-see on any visit to the city, even if you're not planning on taking a train anywhere. Three more blocks east and you reach another iconic building of the city. Though less for its architectural grandness, it's never won and unlikely to ever win any architectural awards for beauty, and more for its global presence. Dominated by the Secretariat skyscraper, the buildings of the United Nations headquarters, so often featured on news bulletins around the globe. Originally built in 1951, the building represents an ideal, if not very regularly achieved, goal of a world working together. The UN buildings themselves sit on the East River, marking the end of my journey down 42nd Street, so instead it's time to turn north 8 blocks and west 6 blocks to make my way back to the junction of 50th and 5th and the site of the city's cathedral, St. Patrick's. Built between 1858 and 1878, though there was a slight pause in construction for a few years in the early 1860s due to a little civil war, and occupying a full city block, the cathedral is the seat of the Archbishop of New York. In any European city, it would be easy to get an idea of the scale of a city's cathedral, but here in New York, surrounded on all sides by skyscrapers, it looks from the outside to be no larger than a parish church, but once inside you get the full vibe of a major cathedral occupying a large space. Visiting just 6 days before Christmas, it was clear the cathedral was all fully prepared and ready to go for the big day, not least of all looking like every poinsettia on the East Coast had been placed on the altar. Across the road from the cathedral is the Rockefeller Center, a complex of 19 buildings covering 3 blocks from 48th to 51st Streets, and pretty much the iconic Christmas centre of New York. The lighting of a Rockefeller Christmas tree of a Wednesday evening following Thanksgiving being broadcast live across the US. Below the Christmas tree, below Rockefeller Plaza, the ice skating rink only adds to the Christmassy feel of the city. North once more, 55 blocks, lucky the subway is so good, and we're almost at the top of Central Park, and the next museum on my tour. The Museum of the City of New York was established in 1923 to tell the history of the city, and is one of several museums that form the Museum Mile, a section of Fifth Avenue from 82nd to 110th Streets that contain one of the densest concentration of museums and culture in the world. Along with the main exhibition charting the history of the city, the museum also houses changing exhibits on topics relating to the city and its people. 13 blocks south and you reach one of the few low-rise iconic buildings of the city, the Frank Lloyd Wright-designed Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum. The museum was established in 1937, though its iconic building wasn't ready to be moved into until 1959, having taken 15 years to design and build. The collection is primarily focused on Impressionist, Post-Impressionist, Early Modern and Contemporary art, with the bulk of the collection being displayed over the 6-storey gallery arranged around a helical ramp so that you slowly ascend or descend through the collection. Today, the collection has grown to over 8,000 works, shared between the New York and Bilbao galleries. 6 blocks south and you reach the granddaddy of New York museums, the largest museum in the Americas with over 2 million works in 2 million square foot of exhibition space, and despite COVID, nearly 2 million visitors in 2021, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or more simply, the Met, is a museum that everyone thinks of in New York. The museum was founded in 1870 with the first buildings on the site opening in 1880. Since then, expansions, extensions, renovations, enlargements and redesigns have turned the museum into the grand building that it is today. Whilst from Fifth Avenue it looks like a single coherent building, the museum is happy to show off its history as you walk through the building. You can see several different building structures and styles, from the earliest red brick 1870s buildings to more modern concrete extensions, from grand halls housing stories high exhibitions to small intimate rooms for 1 or 2 special artefacts. The Met covers a broad range of history and geography, with exhibits from around the globe and throughout history, with Roman, Greek and Egyptian statues to Dutch masters. One of its largest collections, which is unsurprising given its location, is its section on American art, with a large number of paintings, sculptures and artefacts from American artists or of American subjects. perhaps the most famous being Emanuel Lut's 1851 painting, Washington Crossing the Delaware. Harking back to the earlier visit to the Guggenheim, the museum even has the living room from Frank Lloyd Wright's house, carefully dismantled and reassembled. Perhaps the most popular exhibit in the museum, and certainly the largest, is the Temple of Dendur. The temple was originally located in the Lower Nubia in southern Egypt, but with the building of the Aswan Dam, it and 21 other temples were threatened with destruction as they had been flooded as part of the lake built behind the dam. Working with the international community, Egypt dismantled the 22 temples and relocated them, some to higher ground near to their original locations, but some were donated to other countries. The Kaabasha Gate was donated to the Egyptian Museum of Berlin, the Temple of Dibod is now on display in Madrid, and the Temple of Dendur was donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and today stands proud in its own special gallery. Heading out from the Met and you find yourself in another of New York's icons, Central Park. The most visited urban park in the US and reportedly the most filmed location in the world, Central Park is New York. Though as a Brit, it's always worth reminding New Yorkers that it's actually inspired by Birkenhead Park in Liverpool. The park is split into three sections. The north end, which sits north of the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, mid-part between the reservoir and the area around Bethesda Terrace and Terrace Drive, and then south end for everything below this. The park has multiple different areas for different uses, whether they be large meadows for people to relax in, softball fields for people to play in, for different walks through wooded and hilly paths, or for various theatres, lakes and rinks for specific activities. Almost in the centre of the park is Belvedere Castle, a folly built between 1867 and 1869, which now acts as an observation deck and since 1919 houses Central Park's official weather station. South of the Belvedere and you enter the part of the park called the Ramble, one of the main woodlands in the park, covering around 38 acres and made up of a series of winding paths around rocky outcrops and small streams. The paths and streams of the Ramble lead you down to the lake, covering 20 acres and excavated by hand from originally swampy ground. You can cross the lake by Bow Bridge, which then takes you down to Bethesda Terrace and Fountain. The terrace form the northern end of Central Park Mall, which runs for around 7 blocks in the south end of the park. The lower passage for terrace has an arcade decorated with around 14,000 Minton encaustic tiles. More commonly found as floor tiles, they've been set in the ceiling of the arcade. Next time, I take a series of journeys from Manhattan to the islands of New York Harbour to explore Governor's Island, visit Lady Liberty, and find out more about immigration on Ellis Island.